think I can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. It's so yay. Awesome.
The first thing I have to do is apologize for my house. We started some remodeling, and then I had a situation with a sink overflow yesterday and ruined our kitchen ceiling.
Susan, no.
Yes, so our whole house is like torn up. If you could see what was to the sides and in front of me, you would laugh. But
oh my goodness,
that's remodeling. You
have a very good attitude about it.
It's all part of the deal. Yeah. Yeah. I sort of have a good attitude about it. We're going to Sarasota for a month in February. And I just keep telling the contractor, you can have the house in February, all of February. We don't want to hear from you.
Yeah. He's probably like, I have other jobs too. It's fine.
Give us our month, you know.
Oh my goodness. So I guess you're just going to have to enjoy some delicious takeout for a little while.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that.
Right? Oh my goodness. Well, I'm so glad that we were able to have you join us this evening, despite all of the insanity going on in your home. To get us started, Susan, if you don't mind, would you tell our readers a little bit about yourself and how you got started writing?
Actually, let's see, I have published 70 books with Harlequin. I just signed a new contract for another 4 books, and I have 2 more books that are coming out like in February and June or something like that next year. So that takes me up to like 76 with them and 10 with other publishers. So I've done some for Thule and Entangled and Guideposts. So I'm up close to 90 books now. And I also wrote a how to write book called Crack the Code. Craft your novel using story, scene, and word. And that's kind of my pride and joy, because I didn't have an easy go of it.
Really?
I started writing when I was about 30. I was published when I was 6 years later. And the first 10 books that I wrote were extremely difficult to write. And I couldn't understand why it was so simple for everybody else. So I went and did some studying and some investigating and discovered some things that were very, helpful in terms of what's the word I'm looking for? Not so much strategy, because if you're a storyteller, you're a storyteller.
Right.
But if you want to get published, your books have to be well written. And especially back in the day, before the days of indie publishing, you had to meet standards that were fairly high, and also sometimes arbitrary, because they would toss the word market at you.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's a market, but anyway, so I just never want to see anybody else take as long as I did to catch on to the fundamentals. And that's essentially what that book is about, the fundamentals. But once I figured it all out, I have had a very enjoyable career. I've written a lot of books. I've published a lot of books. I counted today, I had 99 books out last year in foreign countries.
Wow.
Susan, so that's pretty cool. Yeah. All in the same year,
Yes, that's incredible. Do you keep copies of your international titles?
No, I did at first, and our children told us that if we didn't clean out the house, pretty soon that they were going to burn it down rather than sell it.
Right. Nice threats.
Yeah. Kids, huh?
Right. I was like, as a daughter, I was like, oh, I already know where you're going with this. Your children threatened you. Okay, I get it. Yes.
Well, this came right after my husband and his family had to clean out his parents' home. They both went to a facility, and my husband and his siblings had to clean out the house, and it was just awful.
Yeah.
Our favorite find was a leisure suit.
Ooh, what color?
In the closet, green, lime green.
Very leisurely, but also a little bold.
very, very bold. It was hard for all of us to imagine, especially the kids, imagining their grandfather in a lime green leisure suit. So we were very familiar with what they were telling us, and it's been interesting as you clean your house out. You relive a lot of your life, and it's very a lot of good memories, and happiness,
Yeah.
Especially if you can get one of the kids to help you.
Absolutely. Yeah. You stop, you read a little bit or a lot,
Well, that was our biggest problem. When the kids came for a holiday about 2 years ago, they were like, "Mom, you do realize that you hoard books?" And I'm like, "Yes, I know I have a problem." And it kills them because I'll have a lot of books in ebook and paper. I sometimes, and so I have duplicates of a lot of books, and they said to me, "Why don't you just get rid of the library in your office?" And I said, "Because if there is ever an electromagnetic pulse or a nuclear war or something, I will be the most popular person on the street because I will have books to lend."
That's very, very true. And if not, you have some strategies in there for how to survive if there are things that you need to, or like how to farm.
Well, I'm hoping that I can trade books for food.
It's a good currency. Oh my goodness, that is so funny. So after having 90 plus books in print, how do you keep it fun for yourself? How do you keep like the stories fun?
Actually, I was thinking about that today, that a lot of people will say, I saw this couple at a bank and I thought, oh, I should write a romance about them. My mind works very differently. I have to write something about which I'm curious. And that's why a lot of my books are set in unusual places, or my heroes and heroines have occupations like vineyard owner, because I'm curious about, something that's in the book. One book that I wrote, I'm trying to think of the title. I think it's Hired by the Unexpected Billionaire. The heroine is a victim essentially of a sex crime. And, her boyfriend took pictures of her when she was sleeping, naked pictures of her when she was sleeping, and put them up on the internet. And I wanted to write that book because I was curious to explore how it would change your life if you were, violated in that kind of a way. This, of course, the book takes place probably 10 years after the event, so she's a whole different person. But when she starts dating a guy who is in the news all the time, she realizes they're going to look into her past and all that. She's going to go through all that again. But I have to be curious about what I'm writing about. There has to be something that hooks me into the story. Harlequins are notorious for having boundaries that their stories fall into. And so if I have to keep within certain boundaries, then something about the story has to be really delicious for me. We joked after I wrote the book that was out in November, trying to think of the name of it, The Billionaire's Island Reunion. That was it. It takes place on a private island in the Florida Keys. And when I got done writing the book, because I watch a lot of YouTube videos and do a lot of research about the locale, and that was really what interested me, was the location.
Okay.
And when I was done, I mourned the loss
Oh
of the
no.
island. I was like, I think we're going to have to go to Florida.
Uh-huh.
I think we're going to have to go see these, because I just miss them. I miss them tremendously. But it doesn't help that I live in Pennsylvania, where right now it's probably snowing.
It's complete opposite of Florida. Although we do have a couple of Floridians on the call tonight, and one was saying that it was in the 50s, so it was a little brisk this morning.
Ooh, brisk for them. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Very chilly.
Very, very chilly. Yeah.
So then in that case, what was the inspiration? What sparked the inspiration for Reunited Under the Mistletoe?
Well, actually, that was a Harlequin generated mini series, where
Right.
they give us the story. Three of us together, three weddings, or three couples that meet as a result of this wedding. They're all in this high society wedding. And you're going to laugh when I tell you this, but I loved the story that they gave me. But even more, I loved the couple whose wedding arced across all three books.
Oh.
And nobody in the group was concerned about planning the wedding, because the wedding was just supposed to be in the backdrop. This heroine, or this woman, the bride, came from like this wonderfully wealthy, exclusive Upper East Side family. And the groom had started his own company, and he was like a tech genius. And nobody wanted to plan their wedding. And I'm like, I do. I would love to plan that wedding. So as I have my couple going through the story, and she is like a public relations person for a charity, and he took over the business that his mother had started when she unexpectedly died. So they're very interesting people. But they're also not the kind of people that you think are going to be like best friends with these two super wealthy people who are getting married. So I had this whole network that I had going on about the couple that I had getting married, but also this very exclusive, very wonderful society wedding that was the backdrop.
Yeah.
And you know, and how did these people meet and become friends enough that they would be in their wedding? So it was all kinds of fun for me.
That's
and
cool.
I love to set things in New York City too, because New York City is such a cool place. And I've been to the city a couple of times for RWA conferences and trips with my sisters, and friends. And it's just a cool place, you know. I mean, you can eat anything you want. You can find a restaurant that sells it, but you also have to be prepared to pay $20 for mixed drinks.
Very true.
Let's not forget that. But
yep.
I think that New York City just absolutely intrigues me. So that's why a lot of my stories are set or have, you know, a pullback to New York City. I have a book that I'm working on right now. The heroine is thinking of starting her own public relations firm, and she's got a wealthy, well-known client, but he is the client of the company that she works for. And the whole way through the book, she's saying, I'm going to go back to Manhattan and start my own firm. And I'm like, yes, let's go back to Manhattan.
Let's go to Manhattan. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
What do you find juicy and enjoyable about writing about the rich people, about rich lives and the elite and like society?
No matter how much rich people try to tell us they're just like the rest of us, they're not. And because they're not, they have some very unique and some very interesting problems. When before I started writing, I was a legal secretary, and that opened the door for me, because I had special skills, to work with some people who were very wealthy. And, you know, you could be eating lunch with them and they could look like perfectly normal people, and then they'd get in their helicopter and go home. You know?
Right.
No matter how much you try to tell me you're like us, you're not, you know. But also, being wealthy opens the door to some unique things, having things that other people can't have, like Jay Leno. What does he own? 57 cars.
Yeah, something ridiculous. If it's not 57 cars, it's 57 garages where he holds all his cars.
And there's also the idea that when I go to Vegas, you know, I hop a plane and, you know, with sisters or family or other writers or whatever, and I wear Bermuda shorts and a tank top.
Right.
And then you go out at night and there are people who are in gowns and there are people who are, you know, all fancied up and all gussied up and limos and things like that. And it's just another way to live. And you have to ask yourself, especially if you're a writer, if money isn't your problem, what is?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of stories are based on the hero's trying to get funding for his new project, or the heroine is, you know, needs an operation for her mother, or she's broke, or she's just been fired, or whatever. Well, you don't have those kinds of problems to fall back on when you're writing about rich people. So what is their problem? You know, and that's very fun to think about, a lot of fun to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the, I think that's definitely the appeal as a reader too. Like other than like peeling back into a world that we can't see, it's seeing those very, very vulnerable moments from people who we think are completely invulnerable.
Yes, that they have no problems, you know. I remember one time I was very young and I was reading a book, a romance, and the heroine was like desperate. She's like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I kind of closed the book and I said, you're going to marry the rich guy. Yeah. Just don't worry about it.
Just accept it, okay?
And really that impacted my writing, because I remember that book so well. I thought, if as a reader, especially a young reader, I said, what are you complaining about? You're going to marry the rich guy. I knew that stories had to be more realistic and, you know, not so, I don't want to say trope dependent because I love tropes, but not so obvious. Yeah, the stories had to be a little bit less obvious, but yeah.
A little more complex. Well, and that the fact that you just declared your love of tropes is a perfect segue into my next question. Part of our fresh facts portion is, what is your favorite trope to read?
Well, kind of a funny story. I read, and I know a lot of your readers will relate to this. I read 2 or 3 books a day over extended periods of time. And so I had read thousands of books when I decided that I wanted to write. And yet it had never clicked with me that there were tropes. And I remember telling this one woman who was she wrote for, I'm trying to think of it, Love, Second Chance at Love, Joe Second Chance at Love. And I said, I came up with this really great idea. I said, what if 2 people were forced to get married, you know, and they didn't know each other and blah, 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 blah. And she's like, Susan, that's a marriage of convenience. And I'm like, yes, I know. And she said, no. There are a lot of those floating around out there. So I thought I had invented that trope.
That's so cute.
I think more than anything else, the trope that I like the best, and this is going to sound funny after what I said about writing about rich people, but I think the trope that I like the best is like a friends to lovers or enemies to lovers between 2 people who are equal. I wrote a book. It was originally published with the title Her Summer with the Marine, and we're going to re-release it with the title Enemies to Lovers, or Falling for the Enemy. That's what it is. And the story is about people who run competing funeral homes in a small town.
Oh, That's funny.
And they both need money.
Mm-hmm.
So there are no rich people. But the small town brings its own atmosphere to a story. And that was the fun of it, was like, these are two people who went to high school together, and they were always competing, and he was like the handsome football player and she was the nerdy girl, and they liked each other secretly, but wouldn't even admit it to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they grow up, there's this like huge sexual attraction that complicates the fact that they're both trying to get all the funeral home business in this small town. And so to me, friends to lovers, enemies to lovers is a really, really, really wonderful trope. But I think it's a little bit harder to pull off with rich people.
Yeah.
than it is with poor people. Because if you're enemies with someone who's a billionaire, you're never going to get within 10 feet of him. He's got bodyguards.
Right. Unless it's two billionaires going at it.
Yeah. Unless it's two billionaires going at it. Exactly. Yeah.
So then what is your favorite trope to write?
I did a bodyguard book a couple of years ago that is one of my favorites, because the bodyguard story allowed me to have an extremely tough guy hero that, there, in today's political climate, there's not a lot of room for tough guys. Everybody likes the kinder, gentler hero, and that's cool. I love beta males, but in this particular story, he was the head of a security firm, and he had to go and tell this woman that she was an heiress to this like enormous fortune, billions of dollars, and she didn't want it. She's like, I have a job. She was an engineer who was the project manager on some extremely big, wonderful projects like office buildings and, buildings like the Pentagon, that kind of stuff. She didn't need the money. She didn't need the job. And the guy who had died was supposedly her biological father. And she's like, I don't want any part of it. So here's this like big burly guy who's coming into her office thinking she's going to say, oh, yippee, I won tons of money. And so his first job as a bodyguard is to convince her to go with him to see the lawyer, just talk to the lawyer kind of thing. So I love to write anything that comes across as unexpected, and I guess that, the trope of a bodyguard is easy to flip. It's easy to flip on its ear and make it a more interesting story for readers, because the thing about a trope is that it comes with built-in stuff. You want to see the bodyguard have a gentle side. You want him to be a big tough guy, but you want that moment in the book where he's going to show that he's also kind of a softie. If you're reading A Marriage of Convenience, you want that scene where grandma really believes they're married, so when they go to stay at her house, they have to sleep together. You want those scenes that kind of define the genre. So part of the fun of writing almost any trope is to do it in such a way that readers think they're not going to get what they want. How are they going to do this? How are they ever going to, sleep together? And then the payoff is all the more exciting for readers. It's all the more fun, all the more interesting.
Absolutely. Well, before I turn this over to our actual readers that are in our room, how can readers stay in touch with you and find out more about you, Susan?
I do have a newsletter, and you can sign up for that on my website. I think you can on my Facebook page too, but I'm not sure. But I am very active on my Just Plain Old Susan Meier Facebook page, because I have what I consider to be a platform where where I can gather with people and talk about the fact that I just ruined my kitchen ceiling yesterday.
Absolutely. You're like, I have a comfort. I have my group to talk to about that.
Tell my bowling scores, you know, talk about how hard it is to play golf when you have no coordination. And I can't cook. So when I set something on fire, that's usually on Facebook. Hey, another oven mitt bites the dust. You know?
If they didn't want to be caught on fire, they shouldn't be so flammable.
Well, and they shouldn't be oven mitts. They should find another place in the universe, you know. But I love my Facebook page because I do love to interact with people, and I like to interact about real life. I had a couple of things happen over the past couple of years that were incredibly difficult, and you know, Facebook is a great place to get support. And I know the younger people think it's kind of crazy, but I like Facebook. You know, I like to talk to people about what's really going on in their lives, and I'm apparently not afraid about talking about things in my life. One of the ladies that I golf with sent a friend request, and when she saw what I put on my Facebook page, she said, "Wow, you're really transparent, aren't you?" He said, "Yeah." She said, "You're not afraid to talk about your failures." And I said, why would you be?
Right.
Everybody has good days and bad days. And I think if you can find the humor in the bad days and celebrate with other people, you know, who are having good days, birthdays, getting new pets, getting new cars, you know, hopefully getting a new kitchen ceiling.
Fingers crossed.
Then, you know, it's just a great place to see the real side of life. And I think that that's part of the problem with why some people don't like Facebook, is that they don't want to tell, I burned an oven mitt, or, you know, I forgot to put sugar in the pumpkin pie one year. That was awful. It was really bad pie. But to me, that's the meat and potatoes of life, is to share the good and the bad, and to celebrate with people who are happy and mourn with people who are sad, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much, Susan. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to our readers to ask your questions.